There's been a lot of rumblings about a new Kanye West album, but it now seems like we have some real information that's alluding to a release that's going to be coming out very soon, speaking about new music being previewed, as well as a potential release date. So stay tuned for the entire video as we go through these new developments, and make sure to hit that subscribe button as we'll be keeping you guys updated with this entire Kanye West album rollout. But let's get started with the latest updates. So Steve Lacy actually had a set in Ireland at the Electric Picnic Festival on September 1st, and Kanye decided to fly over there, show him love. And what's interesting is that during Steve Lacy's set, he decided to play some new unreleased Kanye West music, and apparently this music also featured the likes of Ty Dolla $ign and Young Thug. So how did you feel when you saw this?
My goodness. Kanye season is in the air. I mean, listen, we've gone through many Kanye West rollouts. If you guys have been subscribed for the podcast for a long time now, we covered the Donda rollout. We were going through Donda 2, even if that was a bit shaky. But it seems like we are in a new era of Kanye West. And if you guys pay attention to that snippet, it's very interesting. It sounds very glamorous. It sounds very epic. You could obviously hear maybe Young Thug and Ty Dolla $ign on there, but it reminds me of like a Watch the Throne sort of era of Kanye. And to see him kind of recapture that old aesthetic back and to come back with this more glamorous and brash and in-your-face sort of tone gets me really excited for the future. So what did you make out of the snippets?
Yeah, it definitely gives you, Watch the Throne, Magna Carta, Holy Grail vibes. Like just those European, historic, epic type of scale songs, as he even has a bar about like the Pope and the Vatican. So Kanye's definitely been influenced by the time he's been spending in Japan, I'm sure, as well as his time being spent in Italy and Europe as a whole. And what's interesting too is that, this is the first time that we're actually hearing a taste of this. So we know that this music is happening, it's being recorded, and what's interesting too is that a source close to Kanye told Page 6 that he's been cooking up in the studio all summer and that the album apparently sounds crazy.
I never believed the Page 6 stuff though. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Page 6 is never the most reliable.
I'm not gonna lie to you. But listen, if it was sort of an indication that this might be coming out, we do have a reliable source, which was NBC. NBC came out and said that a release date is imminent, whatever the fuck that means.
That means that it should be dropping very soon.
So, I mean, listen, you do have rumblings about a release date, but I do feel like out of the entire rollout, that is maybe something that's less confirmed at the moment. But I think the thing that you maybe have to concentrate on is the fact that Kanye is kind of in this new era. I mean, even looking at the Donda rollout, it was very mysterious because when he had started that whole rollout, you start to see the masks pop up. You started to hear about the studio sessions, and there's sort of like these overlapping events in every single Kanye rollout that does allude to a new album. So let me ask you this as well. Kanye is also maybe at the peak of his popularity as far as streaming goes. He just set a new record for himself on Spotify, hitting 57 million monthly listeners, which is absolutely incredible. Seeing where he's gone through in the past couple of years as well, listeners are asking, is it time for a new album? So let me ask you that, like with all of this information on the table now, where do you think he goes with this?
Yeah, I think he's one of like the ultimate drivers of culture when it comes to hip hop, and it just goes to show that, I mean, all the controversy aside, people are still eagerly anticipating this comeback album. Like, people are hungrier than ever. Kanye's put out no new singles, no new features, and his music is lasting the test of time. People are still bumping it on a daily basis, and people are hungry for this new album. And what's interesting too is that as a Kanye fan, you gotta be fucking skeptical, man. Like, there's so many different instances that we can point back to where there were rumblings about a new album. There were studio sessions that took place. You even had Kanye give you release dates for new albums that never ended up materializing. So am I totally convinced that this is happening? No, this could be another case of a Yandhi where it just gets scrapped entirely. But I do think that with Kanye showing face at the Circus Maximus event, for Travis Scott in Rome, that's a good sign. Steve Lacy taking time out of his own set to preview new music, that's another good sign. And, who knows when it comes to a release date? Maybe he's waiting for Drake to put out his release date to jump on that like he tried to do with CLB. Maybe that's something that's a possibility.
That was a very interesting summer because the tensions were super high between the two biggest giants in the genre, and that was such an entertaining moment for the entire community because you have two fan bases that obviously bleed into each other, but it was interesting to see the way that people handled that because it was who was going to drop first, who was going to drop the better album, who was going to come out with these things, and the narratives kind of sparked the entire rollout. So
I just don't want that again, though.
No, obviously not, because you don't want anything replicated when it comes to a rollout. And obviously, they're in two completely different places in the career now, 2 years later. That's how fast music moves, guys. And I also think that For Kanye West right now, listening to the snippets that have surfaced, looking at who the collaborators are, even like let's say Casey getting on threads and talking about him being in Japan soon, which probably already happened because that was maybe like a month ago, or even looking at Ty Dolla $ign, looking at Sci-Hi the Prince that was posting pictures of studio sessions.
Well, it wasn't studio sessions. I think it was Sci-Hi and Ty Dolla $ign like in a restaurant in Italy. And obviously, if they're in Italy around the same time as Kanye,
you know what's going on.
You know what that means. And Sci-Hi is one of, if you look at his credits, one of the best writers Kanye's ever worked with. So that's another good sign right there.
Well, even Ruga, who actually, not Ruga,
yeah,
me.
Ruga.
It was Ruga that had worked on OK with Kanye on Donda. Got on the No Jumper podcast and actually spoke about him helping him on this new album. So that's what's interesting about this Kanye West rollout, is that it's mysterious once again. So how do you think he leads into, let's say, the rest of this rollout? What do you think comes next?
I mean, I think there's a lot that's going to come next. I think you're going to start seeing more and more collaborators throwing different hints. Like, for example, if you look at Don Toliver on his IG story, there's been a lot of people from Ye's team that have been teasing new Kanye music and associating it with this hooded ninja emoji. I don't know if you've been seeing this. And Don Toliver himself, a couple of weeks back, ended up posting a picture of himself on a story with that same cryptic emoji. So maybe that's him hinting at him working with Kanye West once again. Apart from that, we also know that Freddie Gibbs is someone else that's been linked to this Kanye album, because on the Bootleg Kev podcast, Hit Boy confirmed that Ye's working on new music and that Freddie Gibbs is attached as well. And now people are thinking, who knows, maybe even Steve Lacy will be part of it. But that's interesting because he got asked about this a year ago, saying, do you have any collabs on the way with Kanye? And he's like, we're just really good friends. There's no plans to work together on new music. But now I think there's a chance.
Probably.
There's definitely
so
a high
much stuff
chance
that could happen in like a 365, right?
I think what's going to end up happening is that you're going to keep seeing all of these little studio session moments, and eventually you're either going to hear about a listening party. I think that Kanye's still in that bag of wanting to showcase the music. And I think you're also going to, eventually just get a release date. I think that it's going to be coming soon. But I want to ask you this. Do you think that he's going to be releasing this on streaming platforms? Because that's a big topic of conversation since all the controversy that got stirred up with the STEM player, which I think the owner of the STEM player is now suing Kanye, so that's probably not going to be the move.
Well, I think it was such a bad look on that entire rollout because people had invested into this $250 mini speaker to be able to listen to a new Kanye West album, and you ended up getting unfinished product from the Miami sessions that didn't sound good. And yes, okay, you could listen to the stems and you could isolate vocals and percussions, but who cares about that, right? You want access to good music and you want to go through it. And I think, yes, maybe it's a good piece of merchandise, but to restrict the fan from the actual music and having them to pay $250 to listen to this album, I don't think makes it accessible.
I think the real issue is just the fact that it was never completed. Like, you paid for an unfinished
Well, even
product,
if it was completed, man, listen, release it through DSPs, right? Or at least release it through a website. Release it somewhere where it's accessible for you and to be able to live with the music. When you have it so restrictive, I understand that it's a piece of merchandise and a moment in time, but it takes away from the fan experience.
So what do you think we're going to get then? Like, you think he's going to go with the regular Spotify, all DSPs sort of rollout?
I mean, for his last official release, what else could he possibly do? I mean, what is he going to do? Release it on DatPiff's website? I mean, there's literally nowhere else you could put it. And regardless, at this point, I do feel like we do need a new Kanye West album that feels tangible. We need something that's going to be able to live with us. I mean, I understand that Donda was probably not going to be released that Sunday morning if it was up to Kanye West and if the record labels didn't push it out. But regardless, now, I mean, it's a moment in time and it kind of defined a whole new era of Kanye West. So if he wants to do that again, I mean, I don't make Kanye's rules here, and I don't want to question him, but release it through DSPs at the bare minimum.
And listen, he's a businessman too, so I think that if the business is right, I think he wants it to be as accessible as it could be for the whole world to hear what he's been working on. But that pretty much sums up the updates. But I do want to talk about just a couple of collaborators that we want to see on it, and just briefly what we think this album might be.
Well, what's interesting too is that you saw Rick Rubin in Italy. I don't know if that kind of stems into anything, but he's such a master curator. He's had the greatest ear in music for such a long time now, and to see geniuses like that collide could be extremely fascinating. Maybe him getting some executive production on the project could help balance out the vision and just whatever Kanye brings to the table. Because what's interesting about Rick Rubin, and if you guys have ever watched, let's say, like the Black Album, a documentary, and seeing Rick Rubin's hand in there, he's always someone that kind of fleshes out thoughts and that helps the artist with the creative direction and that helps them out with like their sort of spiritual journey throughout the music. Because that's a big part for every single artist, right? Is going through that journey, getting into the studio, being able to have the creativity flow. So to be able to do that for Kanye, I think would be extremely beneficial. But besides that, I mean, I always like to be surprised with who Kanye works with.
But who do
next,
you
right?
want to see on the album, though?
I'd love to see a Griselda return, because
Okay.
the thing is that we had gotten them on Donda, and now that there's new like snippets surfacing of like, you know, the soul samples and going back to that old Kanye West and that more braggadocious luxury talk, I feel like someone like a Conway would do super well again. Someone like a West Side Gun would do super well again. Maybe even seeing Benny make the cut this time, right?
Yeah,
So
that would be really nice.
That would be extremely interesting. And they're master curators, not only within music, but within fashion itself. So I feel like that would align perfectly.
Yeah, at the end of the day, though, I think Kanye is a curator in a totally different level when it comes to comparing him to a West Side Gun or someone
I
else.
understand,
from the camp,
but the reason why they made that album, though, is because they definitely added value and they brought a whole different
sure.
mystique to it.
Of course.
So I think that, yes, they could have a part to play on here, and it gets a whole different demographic of people, you know, let's say music listeners excited for this new Kanye
honestly,
release.
like if we're gonna go back to the old Kanye vibes, which seems to be the case, and Consequence also liked and commented on a post that said it looks like we're getting the old Ye back. So it looks like we're gonna get maybe some college dropouts, some Watch the Throne, glamour and glitz and luxury as well. So I would love to see Kanye bring back some OGs that would fit on that production, like a Common, like a Mos Def, just some real spitters that would totally float over some soulful production. Even people in today's day and age that are rapping over that type of instrumental, like a Red Veil. I think that would be an amazing opportunity and a cool moment for the community as a whole.
That would be extremely interesting. You know who's someone else that could fit perfectly on this type of production with this sort of thing going on is The Game. I would love to see The Game make a return. I mean, even going back to Easy last year, that was a wonderful track.
It was fire. It was no crack music, but
regardless, they have a great track record together, and The Game brings a sort of like viciousness to the track list that you love to see. And regardless of the way that I feel about his previous release, he's a legend, and being able to, you know, see him on this album would be absolutely incredible. But one last question before we end off this episode. Do you think it comes this year?
Do I think it comes this year?
And especially with all these new updates now. Now it's no coincidence. This has already started. We're in the midst of this, and you and I both know this. We've covered a Kanye West rollout before.
If I was a betting man, I would not go anywhere near a fucking parlay that involved Kanye West dropping an album many times. And I'll be honest
not
with
on
you,
your
bro.
spread, eh?
I think, listen, I think the album is going to be coming. I just think that as a community, we have to be patient, and we have to understand that a Kanye West album process takes a lot of fucking time, and it takes a lot of mishaps and trial and error type of situation. So my guess would be maybe spring of 2024.
I don't even know if it's coming out. I'm being honest with you.
It just might not happen at all.
We've gotten release dates, guys. We have gotten release dates, and these albums have not come out. So, guys, let me know in the comments section, do you think this new Kanye West album is coming out? It seems like we're in the midst of a rollout, but you never know with Ye. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you guys want to keep up with the rest of this rollout, NFR will be covering it per usual. So, guys, smash that subscribe button, smash the like button if you like this video, and we'll catch you on the next update for Kanye West. Peace.